Beth, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm visiting my dad in Florida. My dad's 87, and we're going to talk about sports all afternoon. It's going to be wonderful.
Well, that sounds like a great day. So I thank you for fitting me into that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that a lot. So why don't we start with the basics? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
Okay. So I'm from New Jersey. I lived in seven other states. I moved back because I really do love New Jersey. I'm one of those people. I know who all the celebrities are from New Jersey. But also, I went from being a news reporter and a sports reporter to being a college professor. So I was working as a news reporter in New Jersey, News 12 New Jersey, for a few years while I was getting my PhD. And I actually thought I was going to run for office back then. I wanted the PhD in criminal justice for a really important reason because people always say Democrats are soft on crime. Democrats don't know about crime. And of course, we know that's nonsense. But now just go ahead and try me. Try me that I'm soft on crime, that I don't know about crime, because I have a doctorate in crime and I've taught 32 different classes in the last 20 years that have to do with all the different sociological aspects of crime. So that's what I've been doing. And then in 2017, I started a nonprofit organization that helps women who are adversely affected by the criminal justice system. Because I'm going to give you a little fact here. Of all the charitable giving in the United States, less than 2% goes to women's issues.
Hmm.
Less than 2%. And we are half the people. And so we have a lot of issues in the criminal justice system. A lot of the studies, a lot of the work has been based on men, and women are kind of the forgotten part of the criminal justice system. So those are the things I work on. I teach and I run this nonprofit.
Beautiful. So let's just start with crime. Um,
Okay.
it is kind of a hot button issue right now, specifically because the president of the United States is suggesting that we send the National Guard into cities and every the problems will be solved. And I don't think there's many people who would disagree. If you put soldiers on every corner, crime will go down, but it's
Right.
not a long-term solution. So
Right.
when somebody is going to tell you you're soft on crime, when Thomas Keene says, "Hey, she's going to be soft on crime like every other Democrat," what would you say? What would be some ideas to for long-term solutions to bring crime down?
Okay. So first of all, we need to start enlightening people about what kinds of crimes are growing. Yes, we have gun violence in the United States of America, but our gun violence, our mass shootings are not something that, first of all, that we could even predict. I mean, maybe we have to have our FBI watching people who are ordering, 12, 15 rifles delivered to their house. Maybe we should be aware of those people. And also, I don't believe that anyone, any regular person who is not in law enforcement or the military, needs to have an automatic weapon. I do not believe that. What do you need that for? You don't need that to protect your family. You don't need that to shoot a deer. It doesn't make sense, but that's another part of the story. So people are talking about crime because the media, of which I was a part for a very long time, we run the stories that are the most salacious, right? If it bleeds, it leads. But that's not the norm of crime. That's not the norm of crime. The norm of crime is a lot of your everyday drug dealing, assaults, things that make life very difficult for average people. And then, of course, you have two majorly unreported sources of crime, which are domestic violence and sexual assault. So that's where we really are in the country. The gun violence has to be curtailed. I mean, I think it needs to be stopped completely, but we really have to do something about the gun violence. We can't keep saying things like, guns don't kill people, only people do. Well, they don't pull the triggers themselves, these guns. So we've got to control this, and we have to stop being so in just some parties just completely um, dependent on the NRA for money for their campaigns. which would take me down a whole other rabbit hole about let's reform campaign, but we're not doing that today. So as far as the true issues of crime, major urban crime has been dropping for a while. It's actually called the Great American Crime Drop. People can go look it up if they don't believe it's true. And then crime did go up a little bit after COVID. So we had a crime drop going for a long time. COVID happens, it's back up again a little bit. People were desperate, people didn't work for a long time. So, what we really need to do to curtail crime in the future is work on the social programs that prevent crime from happening in the future. That's what we really need to do.
Do you think, yeah, so I think there's this misconception that if you're for a social program, if you're going to put up a youth center that's going to help, underserved youth have a place to go and a safe place to be, that somehow that means you want less police. Is that where you stand? Is it a either or? Do you think we can do both?
It's absolutely not either or. First of all, I believe that we need more funding for police. I believe we need more funding for police. I do not believe that we need to be hiring police officers who are less educated, which is now the trend. Now, a lot of these police departments, because people don't want to be police officers right now, we've got an issue in our country. So now instead of people saying, well, you have to have a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, they're not saying that. The more education our police officers have, the better off we all are. Let's put more money into the police. I'm totally for that. Let's have more training on things like domestic violence, elder abuse, child abuse. One of my friends is a police officer in New Jersey, and she was first female in Bergen County. She's just an amazing person. And she said, that while she was being trained, she had 8 hours total training on elder abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. That is ridiculous. These are the problems they're going to be facing most of the time. So we need to have people trained. We need to have something, again, this is, for a very long conversation, but we have something for sexual assault victims called SART teams. Okay. SART teams are specifically for when someone is sexually assaulted in the hospital. We have police trained, doctors trained, and we have advocates. We need something like let's train police officers specifically for domestic violence issues. So I'm saying no, put more money into the police, put more money into community policing, especially in the areas where people are underserved and lower socioeconomic status. That's where we need to have more police. We need the people who live where they need the police the most to trust the police more.
Mhm.
Very simple.
Yeah, one thing I don't know if this was a thing nationwide or just where I grew up, but we had this officer friendly program where the Syracuse police would come in when we were kids and they'd just talk to us and tell us why you can trust police and just little things like that. I always thought it goes a long way towards like the next generation understanding. Okay, this is one of the good guys. I don't know who he is. I don't know who she is, but I can trust them. Um, but crime is a big thing right now. It's a hot button issue because the way we're going about it with the National Guard. But I think the thing that's on everybody's mind is the economy. Whether it's prices going up, we've got tariffs, we got farmers who are struggling right now. We have food insecurity. There are so many things that are happening with the economy. But let's start with the prices. Uh,
Okay.
the grocery store prices are through the roof. Energy prices are jumping up, electricity bills. What do you
Yeah.
think are some things we could do to curtail inflation on these necessities and maybe roll some of this back?
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. So let's start with food. Um, I don't know if you do a lot of grocery shopping. I'm actually even shocked. I'm shocked lately. Um, 3 years ago, I had the privilege of living in Belgium for 8 months and working in Belgium. And I went to the grocery store and I bought 3 days worth of food, 3 meals, 3 days. And let's just face it, I also bought some wine. And I was afraid, oh, this is going to be 120, $120, 120 euros. No, it was 27 euros. And I was really baffled by this. And I was teaching doctoral students at the time, and I asked them the next day, how is this possible? And they said, well, in Belgium, we subsidize healthy food. So I understand that's a big thing, right? That's a big change in our country to actually try to subsidize healthy food. But we have to do this because this is now out of control, right? I mean, when you're talking about a half gallon of milk is $8. That is completely out of control and not affordable. And I was looking in the grocery store here in Florida, and there's a big variation there, right? You can go to some of the stores and maybe not spend as much. But what's really upsetting in New Jersey is if you go to the more expensive stores in the more expensive towns, you're paying less for the same exact brand of milk as you are in the poor areas. I don't want to say poor, but yeah, they
Yeah.
are. And I can tell you there was one brand that in a very expensive, wealthy town in my district was 6.79 for a half gallon, which is still a lot. That same exact half gallon, just a few miles away, was 7.99. And that is an area where there might be some older people who don't even have cars. They can't go driving around looking for better prices. So let's get this under control. Let's figure out how much do we really need to subsidize these major, major farmers instead of local farmers, instead of maybe seeing how we have to kind of revamp the system if we can't get inflation down. I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to get inflation down for a while because of these tariffs.
Mm.
And so your question, I'm sorry if I'm being cagey, but it's kind of a twofold thing here. We have to, number one, stop these crazy tariffs that really don't make sense, that are really attacks on the American people. And then the other hand, let's change the system around. I know that Senator Cory Booker talks a lot about this, a lot about subsidizing healthy food. And I don't understand why we can't do this in this country. Yes, they say, well, Belgium is a smaller country. Well, so what? We are bigger and we have more resources.
We have
So
more
let's,
money. Yeah.
and we have more money. So let's make that work. And then something that came to light to me recently is the insecurity, the food insecurity in my own district, that it was very surprising to me. I'm going to take a sip of water.
Sure. Go ahead. I'm just gonna to avoid black noise. We'll just, yeah. We can't be quiet. We're not on the radio, so it's okay. But you want to avoid, yeah, dead
I know,
air.
I'm so sorry, but it was getting gravelly.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so recently I found out about this food bank that's in my district. And the food bank was started in 1982 by a person who lived in this area who actually had a meeting with Mother Teresa. Okay. And the quote was Mother Teresa said, "You don't have to go very far to find hunger."
Mm.
And so that I think really fits in this district. When you are talking about a district where you have these really expensive places, these beautiful horse farms, where Jackie Kennedy's horse farm was, and where Donald Trump golf course is, places like this. So we have a lot of wealth, but we have poverty too. And so this particular food bank started out as kind of a mom and pop organization, and then recently, they have grown so much that now they've got kind of a market so that people don't have to feel like they have to show up, and everyone knows that they're going to a food bank because they can't afford it. Nope, they have a kind of a warehouse and a market that people can go to, and they can get healthy food there. And just some interesting numbers. In the last 3 years, I wrote this down. So in the last 3 years, in 2021, there were 12,000 clients for this food bank. In 2023, 27,000.
Jeez.
And then last year it was 32,000. So now what is going to happen going forward with all of these cuts, with all of these cuts to SNAP and all of the other, any kind of cushion that we have for food? And as I said, this is the 12th wealthiest district in the country. So we can all imagine if this is happening here, how much worse is it in other places?
Yeah, for sure. That's staggering that 32,000 people are utilizing a food bank. And the cuts are coming, cuts to the, subsidies for food banks, SNAP benefits. How do we get past this? How do we there's so many people who talk a good game and then they get to Congress and all of a sudden their care for the common person is gone.
Yeah.
What's the disconnect there and how do you avoid it yourself?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm one of those Congress candidates, congressional candidates who doesn't have any money. So and I don't have any stocks in the stock market. So I can't do any kind of insider trading. So that's not really going to happen to me. But aside from that, this is a great question. When I teach research methods to my students, right? So I'm a social scientist, and everything that we do as social scientists, we hope, I mean, unless they're evil social scientists, what we're supposed to be doing is trying to make society better, to try to solve society's ills. And then when I'm teaching them all the different parts of the paper that they have to write, get the background and then do your survey or do your observation. And then there's a section called policy implications. Policy implications. And from teaching this now for I don't know how many years, and from doing this myself, because I also conduct research, I basically say to them, it's really hard to get people to be good, right? You just can't say in your policy implications, you need to stop that. You need to stop having domestic violence when you're watching football at home. You need to you need to stop doing any of these kinds of activities. You need to stop being greedy. You need to worry about your neighbor. We can't legislate that. We cannot legislate good behavior. And so, my very, very sad conclusion I've come to is if we can't make them behave in a way that's neighborly and good toward other human beings, hit them where it hurts in their pockets, or make them understand that if we can't, like what they did with Jimmy Kimmel, right? People canceled Disney, people canceled Hulu. Oh, he's back on the air. Hit him where it hurts because they do understand money.
Mhm.
But some people don't have enough money to even hit them where it hurts. And in that other case, I think we need to explain to people somehow that if we continue this kind of cycle of poverty, this kind of cycle of hopelessness, the cycle of incarceration, this is why we have crime. So if you don't want to be a victim of crime and you don't want to live in crime, let's not bring American troops in to, have guns up against other Americans, which I'm not exactly sure we're supposed to be doing. How about instead of doing that, we start to understand that the more opportunities you give to people, then the more likely they are to have the life they want. Because you don't grow up and say, you know what, I want to be a criminal. I mean, maybe, like in Goodfellas, he wanted to
Sure.
do that. But otherwise, most people don't have that as their ambition.
Yeah, a hungry person will rob a grocery store. Somebody that had a full belly isn't going to have the inclination. Um,
Exactly.
Going back to the tariffs though, and food insecurity, one of the problems, the issues that a potential Democratic Congress will have in 2027 and 8 is that Donald Trump will still be president. You'll still need his
Yeah,
sign off. Now, the Supreme
right.
Court, they may take care of the tariff problem for you,
Yeah,
but they don't seem unwilling to put any checks on the president anymore.
yeah.
Um, so the tariffs look like they're here to stay. So with that, what do you think if you're in Congress, what do you think you could do to curb the damage? Especially we see farmers right now pleading for help, begging. What do you think you could do in Congress with a Democratic majority?
I think that maybe we need to just use innovation, right? We're going to have to get around this guy. We're going to have to get around the tariffs. You're right. I mean, if we can't get rid of the tariffs, I guess I'm hoping, we get in there, we take back Congress, magic wand, we stop them. But obviously, that isn't going to happen. I think we have to start looking at our budgets, looking at our resources, and making sure that we use all of our resources in a correct and better way. And also, we've got farm situations going on in New Jersey. People don't think New Jersey is a farm area, but we are the Garden State, and we do have farmers. And now we have farmers who are losing their helpers, right? So I think if we do take back Congress, then I think we need to try to figure out how we can help the states. Because basically, that's where the problem is going to be. If we can't get the federal help, if we can't make that happen, we have to try to find a way to help the states figure out how they can make it work. Now, the problem for New Jersey is not as bad as the problem for the other states, because as we know, the blue states are really funding the red states.
Yeah.
So that and since I want to be fair to everybody, I can't just say, well, it's going to be okay for New Jersey because we'll figure out a way how to make that work in New Jersey by plugging some of those holes in. The cuts to basically, I think billionaires can't be paying tax cuts, and that's where we're going to have to get some of that funding. We're going to have to get that funding. We cannot have that because the tariffs are one thing, but for example, because of the cuts to federal funding in education, now things like school lunches are not affordable. And that's going to be everywhere in the country. So we have to get the money back, let's say, into the school system, first of all. I think that would be one way that's sort of tariff proof is taking the money from the billionaires and putting it back into education because you do have people who literally depend on school lunches for their food and also Head Start and SNAP. Those have to be put back. They cannot be cut. That would be one way that I think we could at least get the food insecurity down. um, it is really an issue, but maybe we do have to start saying, let's stop subsidizing all the corn. Sorry, Iowa and Kansas, but let's stop subsidizing all of this corn and putting cornstarch in all of our food, and then taking some of that funding and putting it more into the various smaller farmers and the mid-sized farmers and trying to get the cost of our food down. So I think we're going to have to rearrange the money, definitely put the money back. SNAP, Head Start has to go back and put the money back for the education because the states can't absorb these cuts.
Yeah. Let me ask you, the right now the Democrats have kind of drawn a line in the sand with the current budget. The continuing resolution is saying, look, we want two things. We want those Medicaid cuts back. We want the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act extended.
Yep.
We're not budging on them. You're going to negotiate with us. Do you think
Yep.
that's the right way to go about things? Or would you, if you were in Congress, would you be standing with the Democrats right now and saying, yes, stay
I
for
would. I definitely would. Because those cuts to Medicaid, they seem straightforward, but they're just really not. They affect so many different things. So, for example, people probably don't realize, but a lot of college students get their insurance, their health insurance, because of the Medicaid programs, because of the way it functions, right? And then we have college students who you're not even allowed to go to college if you don't have health insurance. So you may have families who cannot put their kids on the insurance, and now we're going to have underinsured
Hmm.
college students. This is actually a bigger issue than people even think. So all of these kind of insidious little cuts, and of course, the cuts to people with disabilities, that has to be restored. This is actually something that is so difficult for so many families across the nation and across CD7. I mean, that has to be restored. So I would definitely stand with that. If those two things, if we can just at least get those two things before we take back Congress next year, I think that would really help us to kind of get our everyday lives in a little bit of a better place. And maybe at that point, then people can understand that the Democrats will do things for them that we really will do. And we always have done, but we don't have good enough PR. And we've really got to show what we do for people.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it there. Sometimes, people mock Donald Trump because if he, opens a Venetian blind, he's telling the world he did it. But, President Biden at the end said one of the mistakes he made, Donald Trump put his name on those checks. He's
Yep.
like, I'm not out there doing it. And I do think that is something Democrats have to start doing. But you talked about taxing billionaires. Now, the argument against, not just Republican, but the argument against taxing billionaires is if you tax them more, they'll leave. Well, they're just going to take their money elsewhere. Now, though, we're in a place where, the tariffs are going up and all these businesses have to pay these tariffs. And I'm told they're just going to absorb them because they need the American market. Why is it different? Why is it not the same thing? Am I missing something?
No, I think that you're exactly onto it. You're right. They said that in New Jersey a long time ago. They said this back when I think Governor Florio was running, and he was saying, we have to make sure that all these companies comply with all of our environmental regulations because New Jersey used to be a polluted state and now we are not. And we worked on it really hard, right? And we started having, I think we're second in environmental restrictions after California. We tried to base everything on California, right? And then the Republicans were saying, "Oh, all the companies are going to leave New Jersey. They're going to leave." Well, guess what? They did not leave. They didn't leave. They're not going to leave.
Mhm.
They just started to comply with the environmental regulations, and now we have a cleaner state, and we're still one of the wealthiest states in the country. So that's a false argument. But again, it's all fear. Everything is about fear on that side. And then on our side, we're about, well, we're humble and we do it. And you know what? I'm guilty of it too, honestly. I get it because I don't want to sit there. People say, well, tell us what you did and tell us what you did this. And I think like, well, I didn't do it. I don't help women. I don't run this nonprofit so that I can say how great I am. I run it because I really want to help the women. But then if I don't say it, then nobody's going to know it. And
Right.
it's just kind of a crazy thing that we're caught up in. We're doing it because we believe it's right. We feel like we shouldn't have to pat ourselves on the back for that. But damn it, things are really about to go very
Yeah.
badly. It's time to start saying what we do for people.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're in a world now where you pat yourself on the back and say, some people think I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying some people are saying that. You talk though, you mentioned you mentioned
Some people say,
yeah, I don't know anything about that, but I've heard. Um The we talked about the tariffs and farmers and the impact. Um and farmers right now are just begging and pleading for help. And
right.
you'll have, New Jersey, it's the same thing. You have farmers there. And it's kind of along the same lines. Like, what do we do? Democrats are in power. What do you do to help farmers? How do you get through when the one guy who is causing the problems doesn't think he's the problem?
Hmm, this is a really good question. Um, I, my other thing that I fall back on when I tell my students about policy implications. So the one is hit them where it hurts, right? Then two, explain to them how, crime won't happen if we actually do some programs. And the third thing is education. We have to educate people. We have to talk to them. We have to talk to the people on the other side. I had I was confronted by a Trumper after a rally 2 weeks ago. And this rally is it's a Finding Kane Friday. Okay. So Tom Kane apparently doesn't meet with any constituents ever. And so they've established this Finding Kane Friday thing where people go and stand outside of his office and we hold up signs. And it's on a Friday at noon. And the majority of the people are, I would say, the median age is like 78, right? And these are people who we were hippies back in the old day. But anyway, I was there because I don't teach on Fridays. So I go on Fridays sometimes. And I walked across the street and there was a man there. And now I'm alone. And he came up and he was like kind of scary looking guy. And he said, so what's that all about? And I said, well, these are people who are trying to meet with their congressional rep who doesn't really want to meet with them. And we want to talk about our issues. And so then he said, so you're a bunch of effing blank holes. And I said, I can assure you that we are not. I can assure you that they are just people who love their country and care about its laws. And then he goes, well, what's that sign that says guardian of pedophiles? Because it had a GOP guardian of pedophiles. And I said, that's about the Epstein files. And then he kept asking me questions because he was trying to have a fight with me. And I just answered him the way I would answer my students in my class. And then finally at the end, he said to me, so I guess we're not going to agree about things. And I said, you're right. I said, but I want to ask you this. Do you agree that we need to calm all of this down and talk to each other? This was maybe 2 days after Charlie Kirk was shot. I said, do you agree that we need, I looked him in the eye and I was kind of scared of him. I said, we really need to calm this down and talk to each other? And he looked at me and he stopped and he said, yes. And then when he pulled out in his truck, he waved goodbye to me. And I thought, wow, okay. He probably is never going to agree with anything I say, but at least he decided to listen because I talked to him. I did not take the bait. I did not fight with him. I did not say, well, you're an idiot, which I didn't. I just thought, nope, talk to him like I would talk to a student who's asking me a question. And so maybe we have to do it. I don't know how, but okay, one more problem. How do we do that with this media? With this media that's so divided and people are not getting the same media. Maybe we need to have more town halls. Maybe we need to be out there. Maybe we need to talk to people where they are, where they live, and not just talk to the people on our own side. I think that might be the only way.
Yeah, you nailed it there at the end. We do not absorb the same media anymore. The 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 facts are the same for all of us, but what we're told are the facts are very different things anymore. It's interesting though when you talk too about how he kept asking you questions, and I do find when somebody I do my live show and somebody comes on and they're asking question after question, they get their answer, they don't follow up, they just move on to something else. They're looking
Right.
to argue. They're waiting for the one answer that's they're
Yep.
in to have the
Yep.
argument. Yeah, and
Yep.
it's a challenging moment because you're like at any moment
Yep.
they're going to blow up. But
Exactly. And
good on
I
you
just kept
for
thinking,
avoiding
I
that.
just kept thinking, you know what? Just to keep talking to him the way you would talk to a student and just be, very exact, very polite. Don't say the same words. Don't, don't do name calling. Don't do any of that stuff. And it was, I was kind of like, ooh, when I walked
Yeah,
away. And then my friend said to me, you sat and talked to a guy in a parking lot by yourself? Are you crazy? And I didn't even think of it. I just thought, no, I feel like this is an opportunity to talk to someone one on one and see that I'm not a crazy person and that maybe he can understand that we're not all trying to harm them. We're not trying to take things away from them. We really all just want to live together in peace and have a good life.
yeah. Believe it or not, teachers are not kidnapping children for 2 weeks, giving them a sex change and sending them back to their parents.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
hardly ever do that.
Yeah, that's very rare. It's a different time. COVID was a different time. All right. Yeah.
Right.
Um, though it's like healthcare. Right now we talked about the cuts already from the big beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to harm people. And if you say people are going to die, you'll just get accused of fear mongering and being hyperbolic. But I think what people miss is if you live in a rural area and your nearest hospital is 45 minutes away, but these Medicaid cuts close that hospital down, now it's 2 hours away. Don't think of just a routine checkup. Imagine having a heart attack and now the nearest care is from 45 minutes to 2 hours. That's life
Right.
or death.
That is life or death. Exactly. That's very interesting too. And this is not exactly the same, but related to this. So my nonprofit helps every woman who gets out of prison. We help domestic violence survivors, but we also help every woman who's out on parole because they leave the prison with nothing. And then they have to get a job or then they're in violation of parole. So they have to go get a job. They have to have toothpaste. They don't have anyway. So we had a parolee who was released on a Friday. Now the prison is actually in my district and it's very far away from any urban area. She was released on a Friday and had no food and no money. But they told her to go to the soup kitchen that they normally tell people to go to. Well, guess what? It's closed down. It's closed down. And so now she wasn't going to have any food until Monday.
Hmm.
Until Monday. And then luckily, I have the person who's on my board of trustees who works for parole called and said, "Can we help her?" And then, we did. We got her some food. But it's all of these things. The food banks aren't open. The hospitals aren't open. The clinics aren't open. Now, how are they supposed to get there? Call an Uber? They don't have money. They don't have a credit card. They probably don't even have a cell phone. So again, you're going to have a heart attack. You need minutes. What if you're choking, right? You're choking and your brain cells are dying and there's no place anywhere close. The ambulance can't even get to you on time. These are all real considerations. This is not just, kind of an out there, oh no, worst case scenario. No, these things are happening. They're already happening. Hospitals are shut down, food kitchens are shut down. Basic things that we've counted on as Americans as the net that saves people from falling down into the cracks. The net has a giant, giant hole.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough to like you're trying to talk to people about these issues. And when one side is suggesting that you're fear mongering, when no indeed, and you're desperately trying to tell people that 2 years from now, when these cuts go in, you're gonna come back and say, oh my gosh, why wait till then? Why wait to fix the problem? Unfortunately, part of not, I guess it's not unfortunately, it's just the reality of being in Congress. You're not going to just deal with these kitchen table issues. You've got
Right.
to deal with world affairs. Right now,
Exactly.
the Ukraine war is still raging on. The United States is very much still a part of it. The president, Donald Trump, has actually done a 180 for some reason. He is now saying that maybe, yes, Ukraine can take back all their land. You never know what he's going to say 1 minute to the next. But for you, would you support continuing to defend Ukraine and help them out? Is there a line in the sand where you would say, let's send our troops in?
Um, yeah. I think we're talking about Poland right now. And I think that that's, they're stepping too far.
Mhm.
They're literally stepping too far. And I do want to say one other thing about this Ukraine war. So when I was living in Belgium, okay, I'm going to brag. I was a Fulbright scholar and I was there. I was there representing my country. And when you're a Fulbright scholar in Brussels, because NATO is there and the European Parliament, you get invited to a lot of things. And I was at the ambassador's house. The ambassador to Belgium is his parents were Holocaust survivors. And he had just returned when we met him. He had just returned from Ukraine. And so this is 2023. And he said, what is happening in Ukraine right now is just like the Holocaust. It is horrible. The horrors that are being committed are inhumane beyond, right? That's 3 years ago. And then you have people, or 3 years ago, what year is it? 2 years.
Yeah.
So you have people saying, well, it's not so bad, it's just kind of like everyday fighting. No, no, no. There are atrocities being committed. And we are not talking about that as much as we should be in the United States. I think maybe if more people knew what was really going on there, instead of just like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying it's a made up war by the Democrats, uh, it's just terrible. It's just terrible. So I completely am behind Ukraine, and they should not give up their land. These people are so brave and they are not backing down, and we should help them. And we also, all of our NATO allies are all around there because if he starts to get in more, if he starts to get into Ukraine more and get more land, he's going to go elsewhere. He's going to keep it going and he's going to go into Poland. So, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a war person, but come on, we have to defend these people.
Yeah, I think Pete Hegseth, whatever you think of him, he said it. He said, "Look, if you want peace, you got to be ready for war." And it's an if I had my wish, Putin would just turn the tanks around and this would be over. But it doesn't seem like that's his reality. And we have a choice as the leader of the free world to either defend it or let him take over. This is our option. But hopefully it ends sooner than later. We can avoid that.
I
Um,
say Slava Ukraine.
there you go. So I want to ask you a few kind of short answer things. You don't have to go
Okay.
in that depth, just to
Okay.
kind of put you on the record on how you feel
Okay.
about it. I think I already know the answer on some, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Even
Okay.
if it's going to sound stupid that I'm asking you because anybody who's been watching this knows what you're going to say, but here we go.
Okay.
Um, Women's health, is that between a woman and her doctor? Or does the government have a say in that?
Hmm. I believe between a woman and her
Yeah,
dog.
yeah. Sorry. Universal health care, would you be for some form of that?
Absolutely. And can I just say one thing that's not as part of this short answer?
Mhm.
There's all of these things when people say, oh, European healthcare, it's terrible. Yeah, sure, everybody has it, but you got to wait, weeks and months and it cut. Baloney, baloney. I've been actually living in Europe 1 year out of the last 2.5 years in Italy and Belgium. Nope, it's a lie. It's great healthcare. Yes, we need it.
Yeah. Okay. And also, we wait here in the
I know.
United States. We wait. There's people right now. God bless them. Right now, in this moment, there are people with QR codes on the back of their car, need a kidney or I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
And so
I get
like
you.
this whole notion of, oh, you gotta wait, and what do we do here? It's the same
Exactly.
exact thing. If you're, if you're dying, if you have a heart attack in Canada, you don't wait. You go to the hospital, you're in. Same
Right,
here. But
right.
if you if you're having some I don't know, colonoscopy, you wait here. You
Exactly.
schedule it and wait. But at any rate,
Can
uh
I just, can I have a quick story or do I not have
sure.
enough?
Yeah, no, of
Okay.
course.
All right. So a couple of years ago, I was in Belize. Belize is pretty much a third world country. Okay. I was in Belize. I got food poisoning. It was probably from lettuce. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. I thought I was going to die in Belize. So I had to take a small plane to get to the hospital. But when I got there, they took me in, they put me in a room, they gave me an IV. They took care of me, they pumped me up enough. They gave me my prescription right there in the hospital and got me on the plane. And it was $400 total for the
Mm.
whole bit. Okay. I wasn't feeling so well the next day when I was in New Jersey. I was in Glen Ridge. You can look it up, expensive town. I was in a hospital in Glen Ridge because I still wasn't feeling well. I got there. I waited 2 hours in the like hallway before I even got taken back into the area. Then there was no room for me. So they had me on a gurney with my gown hanging off my side, with my IV hanging off the side of my bed. And I'm there like in the middle of the hallway because there was no room for me. No care, no one even caring that the stuff is hanging all off me. That took, I don't know how many hours. Finally, I got out of there. Then I had to drive to CVS and wait in line for my prescription. I didn't get it right in the hospital. Okay. And then they billed my insurance company $4,000. So, if they can do it in Belize, where they don't even have public high school, I think we could do something about it.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I knew the second you said wasn't feeling well back in New Jersey, I knew this was going to be a price story because I'm like, yeah, it wasn't $400. I can tell you that. Um, the Republicans right now have been discussing, or not Republicans, but Trump administration has floated out there raising the age to receive Social Security benefits. Is that something you would go along with to help solve the Social Security problem?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think so because I don't really think Social Security problem is really the problem that they say it is. This is money that people paid in from working, and it's already pretty high. It's already higher than most of the countries in Western Europe, for example. So I don't think so. I mean, I don't plan to ever retire, so I'm not going to be taking mine. But for the other people, I think no.
Yeah. Now, minimum wage, would you support raising it? And if so, do you have a number in mind?
Okay, that's interesting. I think, of course, I support raising it, and I'm also a big union member, so you know how I roll that way. But one of the things that I looked at recently, if you want to get a two-bedroom apartment in New Jersey, in the state of New Jersey, you need to make $51,000 a year for a two-bedroom apartment to rent, not to own. So minimum wage in New Jersey, if you work full time, is a little bit under $30,000. So the disconnect between minimum wage and being able to rent a two-bedroom apartment is a $20,000 difference. That needs to be made up.
Mhm.
So I think what we need to, I, I'm not sure if we should have a federal minimum wage really, because I do think that maybe we have to have a federal minimum, and then different states maybe need to make their adjustments because the cost of living is much higher in New Jersey. I lived in Michigan. It really wasn't the same thing. But yes, let's get a standard federal minimum wage across the board and then adjust it by state.
All right. And then I think again I know the answer to this, but kind of without getting too deep into it, gun control. Um, sounds like you're definitely for gun control. But do you support the Second Amendment? Do you support the people's ability to, the cat's out of the bag? Of course, I'd love it if there were no guns tomorrow, but it's not the world we live in. Do you support the Second Amendment, people to own right to own guns, but you want to ban certain guns? What's your stance there?
Okay, great question for me in particular because I was very anti-gun. I did not grow up in a gun family. In the county I grew up in, you weren't even allowed to hunt deer because it's so populated. Then my first news job was in upstate Michigan, and everybody goes deer hunting. And then I had to kind of understand that people have different ways of living. Okay, if you feel like you must have a gun, we have to have gun safety. And no one, I do not believe, I don't even know what names of guns are. AK, 30, I don't even know because I really am not a gun person. But I do understand that some people are. And in that case, we really need to have gun safety. And we need to not be selling guns, seven or eight or nine or 10 guns to somebody. Why can't we stop this? And obviously, and this is something that's a really major problem across the country because all the laws are different. People who have domestic violence, uh, uh, felony charges for domestic violence should never ever get a gun. They should lose their gun rights. So I just want to say one more thing that I just did not know until recently, because I go to Moms Demand Action rallies, I go to Every Town for Gun Sense, but you can see the operative word is now sense, because we have all realized we're not taking people's guns away from them. We're not going to. But can't we please keep them away from kids, keep them away from the mentally ill, and please, we don't need an assault weapon. You can't kill a deer with an assault weapon and eat it for dinner. It doesn't make sense. And so, yes, I understand people want guns. I personally do not want one, but come on, we need to control this and we need to have sensible gun laws.
There was a shooting, I believe in Michigan, a school shooting, and the parents were actually held accountable. Would you support something like that where the actual gun owner would be held responsible?
Absolutely. When I was a reporter in Erie, so Erie is one of those towns, I did the whole middle of the country when I first started out as a
Erie,
reporter.
PA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is actually really the Midwest. I mean, it's PA, but it's the Midwest. And we had a school shooting, and the young kid, he was in eighth grade. He went home from school and he managed to get the guns out of his father's cabinet, easy to get it out there, and went to school at a school dance that night and killed a teacher and shot some other students. And I just thought, okay, everyone's supposed to be, they think they're so safe. They think that they have their guns locked up. Then how can these kids get them? No, the parents have to take responsibility. They cannot let these kids get the guns. We know that it's really hard to be a kid, right? We know it's hard to be a kid. We know, so, like, junior high school is horrible. Everybody's upset and, they're going through puberty. You have a lot of people who are upset, mental illness, all of these things going on. Let's not give them access to a weapon that they don't even understand, maybe, all the harm that they can really rain on their friends, their teachers. They may not really even understand. Their brains are not fully formed. We established that 25 is when your brain is fully formed. So 13, 14-year-old, really disgruntled, sad, lonely kid, let's not give him a key to a cabinet that has rifles.
Yeah. Seems like that term common sense that gets thrown a lot around a lot these days. It seems like it's that. Now, I'm gonna add the next thing is two parts. And
Okay.
the second part is a bit can be a trick question almost. So
Okay.
the first part is universal school lunch, I think is a yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's fast forward, you're in Congress.
Okay.
You've co-sponsored a bill, universal school lunch. It gets on Donald Trump's desk and he calls you into the White House and says, I'm not signing this, but I will if you rewrite the bill and call it the Donald J. Trump Loves the Children School Lunch Program. Would you do it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I say it's like a trick because it's like one of those things like, do we have to put his name on it? But I'll get the problem taken care of, and all I got to do is just suck up to him a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to go in his office, but my God, if it gets every kid's school lunch, okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think I think when people talk about how do you work with Donald Trump, how do tell him it's his idea. Say, hey, you were talking about feeding the kid, and I think the best thing the Donald J. Trump loves the children school lunch program. We could feed every kid in America. They could learn just like you want them to, sir. And what you
Yep.
got is, sir, with a tear in your eye, and
Yep.
boom, it's done. But
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the common reaction is this. Yeah, I do it. Just don't tell me it's happening. Just make it happen.
We can always change it back later, but let's get those kids some food.
Yeah. So there it is. So I'm hoping if I say it enough, it'll spread and some Republican will pick up on it and say, oh, the Donald J. Trump loves the children's school lunch program. Yeah, let's do it.
Brilliant.
Um, so now you talked about it's Thomas Kane. Not
Yes.
okay, Thomas Kane. So he's not in your district very often. Is that
Well, we don't know
Oh,
because he doesn't come out of, he doesn't, he has, I think he has a couple of offices and he doesn't come out. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I'm not kidding. There's a lot of senior citizens are there doing this protesting on Fridays. And recently he called the state police on them.
yeah.
He called the state police on them. Come on. This is
Yeah.
not really the way to endear yourself to your constituents. And he probably thinks, oh, you know what? There aren't that many of them. I don't have to really worry about them. But that's just terrible.
Yeah, they got family too. I mean, you arrest somebody's grandma, and all of a sudden you've
Yeah,
lost them. But one thing I want to know though. So what does it look like operationally if you're in Congress? What does that look like for the people in your district, do you think?
because I think this is such a disparate district, right? I think that it's going to be very important for me to do the reverse of Tom Kane, right? I need to be able to talk to the people who really don't have those same lower socioeconomic issues. Say, what are your issues? What do you really need to know about? And by the way, I'm going to be talking to a lot of my friends who have money because I'm not in that position, so I don't really know. But I have spoken to a lot of people. I am working with my Republican friends. I have a lot of Republican friends I went to graduate school with. You know, I have a master's in public policy, addition to crime, right? So I know a lot of these people, and they are saying, no, no, no. This is harming us too. It's harming us in ways that you don't know. So I think I need to always be out there, not like Tom Kane Jr. hiding from people, but just making sure that I understand that I'm there serving the needs for the people as much as I can. And I think that I do need to take the other people into consideration. I need to get some Republican votes here. Let's be honest. And also, let's remember too that New Jersey is a moderate state and it's a pro-choice state. And he has not voted to protect women's productive rights. And so I know there are a lot of women. And in addition to that, there are a lot of teachers who are very upset with him. And my plan over the next couple of months, I have a lot of friends who are school teachers, not just professors, but I need to talk to all of them and say, come on, what do we really, really need here? What's happening in your schools? What are the problems that you see? So I think because I am used to working so many jobs and working all the time, when that's my job, I'm going to be really energized.
Yeah.
It'll just be one job.
Yeah, that'll be a yeah, you'll have to create a second job of
Exactly.
getting all these places. So,
Right.
uh, you know, for people that want to help out, people that want to get involved, people that want to send money, where do they go? What do they do?
Well, the best place is to go to my website, which is Adubato, number 4, Congress. That's it. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, Adubato4congress.com. And the reason why I chose to use a 4 instead of an FOUR is because Adubato is hard enough to spell. So let's not get confusing with the F at the end. So I just went for Adubato4congress.com.
Nice.
And it tells a lot about me. And just, I think it says, what I'm about. And if people don't know what I'm about, I think that they'll find out if they go on there and then they can donate there. Or also email me and get involved. Some people are saying, I don't have a lot of money. How can I help? And I'm planning to have a big Zoom meeting to have my friends, because I have a lot of actor friends who don't have a lot of money, but boy, they're great and they can get out there and be vocal. So that's the best way to do it, I
What's
think.
what's that email address?
The email address is Beth Ellen Adubato at gmail.com.
Perfect. All right. Um, so it's right there. You can't see. If you look down, you'll see it. It's right below you. Um, but Beth, I appreciate it so much. It was great talking to you. I wish you all the best. I know you've got a very competitive primary coming up, but if you get through that and get to the general, I'd love to run it back and take a deeper dive into some of the issues.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this has been, I think, very enlightening for me too. I think you really hit on a lot of great things and all the things that are important going on in our country right now. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you soon.